Welcome to this, the final video in my Payments Processing 101 playlist. I am so glad you have come along for the ride. In this playlist, I have curated the topics I find to be critically important foundational knowledge for someone working in card payments. As each of these videos are about 20 minutes long, I can only cover each topic at a high level. Feel free to contact me so that I can come and train your card payments teams in person or online and get much more in depth on each of these topics. In this video, we're talking about EMV, chip, contactless, and tokenization. The topics tie together since contactless and tokenization rely heavily on EMV's chip foundation. Please note that each of these topics are technically detailed and require extensive training and study to understand in depth. In this 35-minute video, we will only cover high-level concepts and the operational implications of those concepts. Many of the statements I make in this video are verified through the EMVCo.com website. As well, I have consulted the MasterCard EMV chip personalization and requirements manuals to make sure this video content is accurate. Who is EMVCo? EMVCo is the company that owns and manages payment card standards, including those for contact, contactless, and tokenized payment devices. The acronym EMV stands for Europay, MasterCard, Visa, the three networks who began the journey to an international payment chip card standard. Today, EMVCo is overseen by 6 member organizations: American Express, Discover, JCB, MasterCard, UnionPay, and Visa. Europay, the missing name on the list, merged with MasterCard in 2002. Chip card deployment began in the 1990s in France and soon spread to other countries in Europe. However, the technology used for these chip cards was not internationally standardized, so the cards really worked at a chip level domestically only. In the late 1990s, the EMV standard was created to provide a single international chip standard. This paved the way for chip cards to become the worldwide reality they are today. Why did we need the chip? There were multiple business drivers that caused the development of the EMV chip standard. Some of these business drivers are still valid today, while other compelling reasons have faded away. Here are 3 of those business drivers. Number 1. Fraud. As I mentioned in my video, POS entry modes, the good, the bad, the ugly, the growth of global card payments industry has attracted fraudsters. Manual imprinters and magstripe readers were the technology used for reading card data before the EMV chip. These technologies were very easy for fraudsters to steal and copy. A more complex payment card technology was needed to make the fraudster's business case more challenging and more expensive. Number 2. Offline transactions. When the EMV standard was developed, many merchants were not electronically connected to payment networks. Manual imprinters, the knucklebusters, were very common. In the 1990s, connecting all merchants worldwide electronically to payment networks was cost prohibitive. Therefore, the EMV standard included, and still includes, rules for setting up cards to interact with a terminal not connected to a payment network, an offline terminal. Today, the vast majority of merchants are electronically connected to payment networks, so this use for EMV is very limited. Number 3. PIN instead of signature CVM. Signature was the most common cardholder verification method, or CVM, for magstripe cards. Since the issuer never saw the signature, and by the 1990s, merchants rarely compared the signatures on the card and payment slip, signature really had no security value left. Today, most EMV implementations have replaced signature with PIN. This provides a dual-factor authentication for the transaction, encrypted dynamic and static data from the card, and a PIN code from the cardholder, both of which the issuer can see and verify. What does a chip card include? An EMV chip is a tiny computer complete with programming and a database. Each time it connects with a payment terminal, the chip and the terminal interact, creating unique data for each transaction. The EMV chip is much more complex than magstripe technology. The magstripe strip on a payment card contains static card data including the card number, the PAN, the cardholder name, card expiry date, a service code, and discretionary data that include a static 3-digit CVC security code. An EMV chip's database contains all the magstripe data. It also includes much more. Here are some of the categories of data objects contained in an EMV chip. Cryptographic keys, The chip contains public keys that allow it to have encrypted communications with point-of-sale terminals, as well private keys that encrypt the data that will be sent from the card to the issuer. Application Identifier, or AID. EMV chips can support more than one network. Typically, each network will have its own application on the EMV chip. The AID is a list of the payment applications this specific EMV card supports. Application Priority Indicator. This data object tells the terminal which application the issuer wants chosen if the card and the terminal have more than one payment application in common. Application Transaction Counter, or ATC. This tracks the number of terminal interactions the card has completed. It is a component of the fraud mitigation tools on the chip. Card Risk Management. This part of the chip manages the risk and fraud tools built into the chip's programming. Offline PIN, PIN try-counter, and offline limits. EMV cards can validate PIN and approve certain transactions without going to the issuer. This would be offline PIN, when the EMV chip validates the PIN, and offline transaction, when the EMV chip puts the transaction through its risk management system and the chip either approves or declines the transaction. Card data. This would be the card data the magstripe card carried. What is different with this data on a chip card is that the CVC security code is dynamic. It's always changing. Offline and online. There are two aspects of a chip transaction that can be offline or online. The first is PIN validation. The cardholder personal identification number, or PIN, is actually stored in two different locations, at the issuer host system and on the EMV card itself. As far as I know, all ATMs worldwide use online PIN validation. They will send the PIN in the transaction message to the issuer host system to be validated. Many POS terminals, but not all POS terminals, validate the PIN using the EMV card before sending the transaction to the issuer. This is called offline PIN validation. This is very important to know in card operation support because of the following implications. Number 1, the two PINs, on the card and on the issuer host, are not automatically synchronized. The issuer must send a PIN update script to the card to update the PIN on the card. If your EMV card offers user selectable PIN, then the card will most likely be shipped with a different PIN than the user selected during the card activation process. The cardholder will need to do a contact EMV transaction, as scripts can only be received by an EMV card during a contact EMV transaction. If that transaction is a POS transaction, the cardholder PIN attempts will fail if the terminal uses offline PIN validation. Only when the PIN try-counter reaches 0 will the POS terminal send the authorization to the issuer with a flag indicating the offline PIN failed. The issuer response to that authorization request will contain two scripts, one to update the offline PIN, and another to reset the offline PIN try-counter. Once the card receives those scripts, the offline and online pins will be in sync again, and the offline PIN try-counter will be reset, typically to a value of 3. This process must also be used if the cardholder chooses to change the PIN for their EMV card. Number 2, offline PIN is not an option for tapped transactions. This is because the terminal must go back to the card a second time to validate the PIN. In a tapped transaction, the card is no longer touching the terminal, so the offline PIN cannot be validated. Only online PIN works for tapped transactions. More about that topic in a few minutes. Number 3, the EMV card will bypass offline PIN once the PIN try-counter reaches 0. Many times, I have troubleshot transactions only to find the PIN try-counter was at 0 and the POS terminals being used did not support online PIN. Each time a cardholder fat fingers or forgets their offline PIN, the counter decrements. The counter does not automatically reset, so even if the errors are months apart, the third error will bring the counter to 0. The only way to reset the counter is for the issuer to send a script to the card to reset the offline PIN try-counter. Offline authorizations are the other offline EMV feature. EMV cards can be set up to approve some authorizations without going to the issuer. The card will use its fraud mitigation functionality to either approve or decline the authorization. Once again, there are significant operational implications. Number 1, online authorizations can use online or offline PIN validation. Offline authorizations can only use offline PIN validation. Number 2, an issuer will find out about an approved offline authorization when they receive the posting record. Several networks allow chargebacks on force post transactions, posting records without corresponding approved authorization messages. However, before doing such a chargeback, the issuer disputes team needs to parse out the EMV data in the posting record to determine if this is a force post or an offline EMV transaction. Please don't assume the existence of EMV data in the posting record means it is an offline EMV transaction. Fraudsters figured that out long ago. This may be a fraudulent force post transaction with bogus EMV data in it. Did I confuse you? Watch my video on single message and dual message to find out how dual message transactions work. Number 3, I've encountered several issuers who want to disable all offline functionality on their EMV cards. There may be fraud and security reasons for doing this on prepaid products and single message debit products. For all other products, I would advise issuers to enable offline authorizations. I have found that stores use offline authorizations as a business continuity strategy when they lose connection to the payment network. This is a really good idea. In a store-down scenario, cardholders can still purchase items as their cards can approve lower-risk transactions offline. How does an EMV chip transaction flow? Once an EMV chip transaction leaves the POS terminal towards the issuer, it follows the same transaction flow as other transactions. You can find more about transaction flow in my video, Where Does a Transaction Go? The EMV magic happens 3 times in 2 places. Number 1, between the EMV chip and the terminal before the authorization message is created. Number 2, at the issuer host as the issuer fraud and authorization scoring apps leverage the EMV data. And number 3, between the terminal and the EMV chip once the terminal receives the issuer response message. Let's cover these one at a time. Number 1, EMV card and terminal interaction, contact EMV transaction. When an EMV card is inserted in a payment terminal, they have a conversation. They interact back and forth, comparing AID lists to determine which network app to use, deciding what level of cardholder validation is required, online PIN, offline PIN, signature, no CVM. The terminal asks, hey, do we need to go online to the issuer or can we do this transaction offline? Remember, an EMV chip can be set up to handle certain transactions itself without going to the issuer. The offline authorization does not go to the acquirer, payment network, or issuer. It is completed between the EMV chip and the payment terminal. An online EMV authorization will be routed through the acquirer and network to the issuer. The terminal provides the transaction data to the EMV chip so that the EMV chip can include this information in its encrypted transaction data. In an online authorization, the EMV chip passes an encrypted data package called a cryptogram to the terminal to be sent to the issuer. Number 2, EMV at the issuer host. The terminal then creates an authorization message to send through the acquirer and network to the issuer. Included in the authorization message is a package of encrypted EMV data created by the card. This package can only be decrypted by the issuer. When the issuer receives the authorization message, they will use their fraud and authorization scoring apps to determine the validity of the authorization request, just as they would for other authorization messages. In addition, the issuer should decrypt the EMV data sent from the EMV card and validate its information, including the following. Cryptographic keys. Did the decrypt function result in readable data or in garbage? Fraudsters pack bogus EMV data into authorizations to fool lazy issuers who only check for EMV data present and don't validate that data. Application transaction counter. Is the counter higher than the last authorization? If not, this could be transaction replay fraud. Transaction data in the EMV data bundle. Does the transaction data in the EMV tags match the transaction data sent by the terminal in the authorization request? They should match exactly. Card risk assessment results. Does the card find this a normal or a high-risk transaction? What cardholder validation method was used? Offline PIN, online PIN, signature, no CVM? Was the CVM successful? What is the offline PIN try counter value? If it is less than 3, Do you reset the counter automatically, or do you notify the customer service to contact the cardholder to verify the cardholder before resetting the counter? Number 3. Issuer response, terminal and card interaction. When the issuer sends the authorization response message, an encrypted EMV data package for the card is included in that message. Please note that the EMV card has logic in it to turn an approval into a decline if the returned data fails the card's validation process. Once the issuer responds to the transaction, the terminal provides the chip card, the answering cryptogram from the issuer. The card will parse out this cryptogram and may turn an approval into a decline based on certain information it receives. This cryptogram may include scripts from the issuer to do card maintenance like resetting counters or changing the offline PIN. I know that some people have complained that an EMV transaction is slow. If you were to look at the interaction and validation that occurs on each EMV transaction, you would realize they are moving incredibly fast. Letter of approval and inventory control. Magstripe cards had only one major technology upgrade over their long tenure. Therefore, an issuer could purchase thousands of blank cards and use them up over 5 to 10 years. EMV card technology is constantly being upgraded. The EMVCo standards are regularly updated with new and improved requirements. To make sure that existing chips and card stock comply with the current requirements, EMVCo will have chip products tested and will issue a letter of approval, or an LOA, for each chip product. This letter of approval will have an expiry date, typically 3 years after the testing completion date. As a chip product nears that end of the approval period, the chip manufacturer may apply for an extension to the LOA if the chip still complies with all EMVCo requirements. Alternately, the chip manufacturer may replace this chip with an equivalent chip or with a chip that is not equivalent. These two terms mean different things to the card issuer. Issuers need to manage their card stock to ensure the LOA does not expire before the card stock is used up. I've seen far too many issuers shred thousands of unused cards simply because the LOA expired long before they used all their card stock. Card personalization. Once an issuer chooses a chip card, they need to create a personalization profile for the card. This profile needs to be validated by a certifying company approved by EMVCo. Theme and UL are two certifying companies I am familiar with. The personalization includes setting up the details of how the card will work: encryption keys, support for offline and online transactions, CVM methods, offline limits, and so on. This personalization profile will be combined with the cardholder information each time the manufacturer creates a new chip card for the issuer's cardholder. The card profile is valid for a specific chip product, a specific LOA. Should the chip manufacturer replace a chip with an equivalent chip, the personalization profile can be updated at the certifying company with the equivalent chip's LOA. If the replacement chip is not equivalent to the current chip, then a new personalization profile needs to be created and validated for each new chip product. These personalization processes take time to complete, so those who manage card stock need to keep these dates and timelines in mind as they manage their EMV card stock. Contactless. As the payment industry has grown, fraud is polarized to specific types and values of transactions. This has left a significant percentage of transactions with low fraud risk. These transactions don't require the full EMV security suite of tools. This has allowed contactless to be used in these low-risk transactions. At the very beginning of contactless cards, there was a separate chip to run the contactless functionality. That was very quickly replaced with EMV chips that could support both contact and contactless transactions. This consolidation of the contact and contactless technology means everything we have covered so far with contact EMV also applies to contactless EMV, with one significant difference. In a contact EMV transaction, the card is inserted into the terminal while the terminal is creating the authorization message. This allows the terminal and card to dialogue, talk to each other throughout that process. With contactless transactions, the card is brought into proximity to the terminal, tapped, and then removed. This allows the card to provide a monologue of data to the terminal. The terminal cannot go back to the card for additional information. Therefore, the following contact EMV functions do not exist in contactless. Offline PIN. The card is gone, so the terminal cannot go back to the card to validate an offline PIN. For contactless, should cardholder validation be required, online PIN is the best answer. In Canada, unfortunately, most POS terminals don't support online PIN. Therefore, when PIN is needed, the terminal prompts for the EMV card to be inserted. This seemed like a good strategic decision back in 2003. In hindsight, it was a terribly short-sighted decision made years before cell phones and smartwatches became payment devices. Card update scripts. Since the card is removed from the terminal long before the issuer response is received, there is no way for the terminal to relay the issuer script to the card in a contactless transaction. This is something important for issuers to remember as they monitor their card script updates. In a contactless transaction, the first EMV interaction between the card and the terminal is abbreviated. Therefore, the other two EMV-specific interactions are different for contactless transactions as well. The cryptogram an issuer receives from the contactless transaction will be shorter than the one from a contact transaction. Therefore, the issuer will need to have unique logic to validate the cryptogram from a contactless authorization. The encrypted EMV data the issuer response message has will not be relayed to the payment card. Therefore, any issuer scripts in that response message will not run. As well, the card will not see this data and therefore will not be able to change an approval into a decline should there be an error in that response EMV data. In spite of these limitations, contactless has grown from a strange new technology to ubiquity in many markets. I remember the early days of contactless in Canada. Teaching people to tap their cards was a 5-year uphill battle. It seemed so unintuitive. Then the tide changed. More and more people began tapping their cards. How far has tap come in Canada? In 2023, over 50% of all transactions were tapped, and that percentage includes all card and cash transactions in Canada. There are a few other contactless notes I need to insert somewhere in this video, so here will be the place. One of the reasons contactless started separate from the EMV chip was that, in those days, many markets didn't have EMV terminals yet. Therefore, contactless started with a magstripe equivalent mode for terminals that were not EMV enabled, and EMV equivalent mode for terminals that were EMV enabled. Today, contactless functionality is part of the EMV chip, and it can still do magstripe and EMV contactless modes. In markets like Canada, the occasional parking meter or vending machine may still be contactless magstripe only. The vast majority of terminals can do both modes, which means almost all tap transactions in developed EMV countries are contactless EMV mode. Contactless payments have monetary limits for no CVM transactions. In the early days, in Canada, $50 was the top limit for contactless without CVM. Contactless could be used above $50, but the authorization would require cardholder verification via online PIN or signature. Payment networks have monitored the fraud rates and have adjusted the contactless limits accordingly. Today, in Canada, the contactless no CVM limit is $250 Canadian. As I mentioned previously, almost all markets in the world support online PIN at POS. Adding CVM allows contactless to be used for any transaction amount. Okay, an issuer may ask for the merchant to do a contact EMV transaction if you want to submit a tap with PIN when you buy your next car. Unfortunately, Canada took a different path. In Canada, the POS terminal will disable the contactless interface at the contactless no CVM limit and will require a contact EMV transaction. This was okay in the early days of EMV and contactless, when all transactions were done with payment cards. However, just a few months ago, I saw a situation where a person attempted a transaction over $1,000 with a payment token on their phone. The POS didn't support online PIN, and the cardholder didn't have their EMV card with them, so the merchant lost a sale. Tapping not only provided people with new and convenient interface with payment terminals, it also provided a way for non-card devices like phones, fobs, and smartwatches to interact with terminals. Tokens. Plastic EMV cards hold EMV program code and its associated databases encrypted in a secure element on the card, the rounded square metal thing on the EMV card. Contactless created a way for that secure EMV data to be relayed to the terminal without the card being inserted in the terminal. So, if we could put a secure element into a non-card device, say a phone, a smartwatch, a fob, or a tablet, and could install a contactless transceiver on that device, could that device become a payment card? Ah, you can see where this is going. Let's talk about payment tokens in 3 topics. Number 1, what is a token and where is it stored? Number 2, token providers and how that changes things. Number 3, how tokens are used. Number 1, what is a token and where is it stored? A token essentially contains the contents of an EMV chip. There are some uses where tokens will be more customized and restricted than an EMV chip on a card. Tokens, like EMV chip data, need to be stored in a secure encrypted location. This secure place may be a secured element on the device or a secured cloud location. If the device has a secured element to store the token, the actual token is resident on the device and can create transaction data at any time in any location. If the device does not have a secure element, the token is stored in a secured cloud location. The cloud downloads a limited number of transaction-ready data packets, say 10, so that the device can interact with an EMV terminal. As long as the device has access to the secured cloud application, new data packets are downloaded as the existing ones are used. If the cardholder goes on a shopping spree where the device cannot access the secured cloud application, the device will run out of data packets and will no longer be able to do transactions until it gets more data packets from the secured cloud application. A token stored at an online merchant is a cloud-based token and will act like a cloud-based token on a device. Number 2, token providers and how that changes things. My first credit card on my phone was back in 2013. In those days, the issuer managed the deployment of the credit card to the phone. It was an actual chip card personalization and resided on a secure element on my phone's SIM card. That was an EMV card, not a token. Times have changed. Token providers now manage payment credential deployments. In the transaction flow, the token provider is located in the payment network between the acquirer and the issuer. The token provider manages the token bins, deploys, renews, and disables tokens, validates EMV data from the tokens, maps the token numbers to the issuer card numbers, the PANs, as the transaction goes between the acquirer and the issuer, and returns. So, today, when I add a payment card to my phone, number 1, I use the wallet app on the device to begin adding the token. I may key enter the PAN of my plastic payment card or scan the plastic card with my phone's camera. Number 2, the wallet app provider, say Apple, Google, or Samsung, validate who I am and pass that information and the card information to my issuer. Number 3, my issuer will use some defined process to validate who I am and that the card and the device are mine. Number 4, if the validation checks out, the issuer sends a message to the token provider to provision a token on this device that maps to my plastic card PAN. When I use the token on my phone, number 1, the token on my phone interacts with the terminal just like a tapped EMV card would. Number 2, the terminal sends the transaction data, including the EMV data, to the acquirer who sends it to the payment network. Number 3, on the network, the token bin is owned by the token provider. Therefore, the transaction is routed to the token provider. Number 4, the token provider validates the EMV data and the device-specific data to make sure the transaction came from the correct device. Number 5, once the validation is complete, the token provider replaces the token PAN with the card PAN on record and adds the result codes from their analysis of the EMV data and sends the transaction to the issuer. Number 6, the issuer does their authorization and risk assessment of the transaction and sends the response message to the network. The response message goes to the acquirer, but the network will replace the card PAN with the token PAN along the journey. Number 7, the acquirer and merchant terminal will see the response with the token PAN and the issuer approval or decline. Number 3, how tokens are used. Tokens can be installed as payment credentials on devices or on computer databases. In this role, there are 3 ways tokens can be used. Number 1, in face-to-face transactions, the token on the device acts as a contactless payment card. If I tap my phone on a payment terminal, the device-to-terminal interaction mimics the contactless payment interaction we have already described in this video. Number 2, the second use of device payment credentials is for in-app payment. Say I go to the Burger King app on my iPhone. I choose what I'm going to order and go to the checkout part of the app. There, it offers me Apple Pay as an option. When I choose Apple Pay, the app accesses my payment credentials on the phone and links it securely to the vendor virtual POS terminal. This creates a non-face-to-face card-present EMV transaction, a much more secure transaction than in the old days when I manually entered my card PAN, expiry date, and CVC number to make the same purchase. Number 3, tokens can also be used by non-face-to-face merchants to replace card-on-file data. This provides the merchant with more security in the event of a data breach. Card numbers can be used anywhere. Tokens are device or merchant specific. They won't work anywhere else. This ability to tie token to a specific device or specific merchant makes them more secure than plastic cards. Attempted transaction using token information like PAN, expiry date, and the CVC will be declined by the token provider if the device or merchant identifying information is missing from the transaction data. This leads to one downside with tokens. Tokens use up a lot of card numbers. Say I have one payment card. In the days before tokens, I would use that card for all transactions. I have about 6 online service providers who bill my card directly. Internet, cable TV, streaming service, cell phone provider, electric utility company, and toll road provider. Each of these would each have my card number and expiry date on file. If I lost my card, what a job to update everything. Now, with tokens, things are different. I still have my payment card. I add that card to my phone, my Fitbit, and my tablet. My 6 online service providers, 5 of these are set up to replace my card on file information with token on file. Now my payment card account has 1 card PAN and 8 token PANs associated with it. That's a lot more card numbers than in the old days. The good news is that each PAN is linked to the others through the token provider database. If my card is lost or stolen, only the card needs to be replaced and the new PAN linked to my tokens. If I replace my phone, a new token is created for the new phone and the old token is deleted. For a cardholder, this new token world is much more convenient. Let me finish this video with 2 common questions I've received about EMV and contactless. Number 1. If the EMV chip requires power for contact and contactless transactions, where's the battery? Yes, the EMV chip requires power for contact and contactless transactions. No, it does not have a battery. The chip receives its required power from the payment terminal. Number 2. What about people stealing the contactless data from my card? Do I need a metal-lined wallet to hold my contactless cards? In theory, yes, someone can steal the data from your contactless card if the device stealing the data is less than 2 inches from your contactless card. The fraudster needs to be well in your personal space. And if you don't have more than 1 contactless card in your wallet. Any contactless reader gets completely confused if it sees more than 1 contactless card. The vulnerability was not that someone could theoretically read your card data. As I described in my video, POS Entry Mode, the good, the bad, the ugly, the problem was that some issuers used the same encryption keys on all card interfaces. That error allowed the person stealing the data to use the stolen contactless data to create a magstripe card and use the magstripe card for fraud. Today, issuers use unique keys on each card interface. Contactless transactions also include dynamic data that is unique to each transaction. Therefore, an issuer can easily identify and stop this type of fraud. You know, I wonder if the people who created the fear to help market their metal-lined wallets made more money on this issue than the fraudsters they were warning people about. 2 more notes on this topic. As I mentioned previously, in 2023, in Canada, over half of the transactions were tapped. This has not resulted in a wild increase in fraud from these contactless transactions. Secondly, have you noticed that your phone requires your Face ID, fingerprint, or password before it will do a tap transaction? Tapping with your card is secure. Tapping with your phone is even more secure. I hope you have found this quick trip through EMV, contactless, and tokens instructive. We have barely scratched the surface of the supporting technology. Each solution has many options available. It takes a lot of study and experience to go deep on EMV, contactless, and token. If you found this video helpful, please click the like button and subscribe to this channel. If you have more questions about the payments industry, leave a message in the comments below. You can also contact me through my website, mentoredbymarkt.com, or via email, markt@mentoredbymarkt.com.